Welcome back to the Wolverine.com podcast, also on our Wolverine.com YouTube channel. As you can see, due to the nice clean layout here, I am your host, Anthony Broome, back again for the third day in a row. Hasn't gotten sick of me yet. This is the third podcast together, but Ryan Van Bergen is also here with me. Ryan, good morning. How's it going?
Good morning. It's going. I'm sure everybody's still checking their phones and wondering if what happened yesterday really happened. You're not alone doing the same thing with you guys, but I'm doing all right. Prospectively, we got some things to work on, and hopefully we can get a good foot forward for the rest of the season. Because I don't want to say it's over. It feels kind of over, but I don't want to say it's over. There's a lot still out there to play for. So looking at that.
Yeah, for sure. I think the immediate takeaway is that it doesn't feel great this morning. It doesn't feel a whole lot better than it did yesterday. Sleep and also caffeine will do wonders for settling people down and kind of moving into the next day. The sun came up today, so that's always good. In terms of, like I said, this one is still. I wrote the column on the game. I've gone back and I've looked at some of the stuff from this is a tough pill to swallow, and I think this is where we'll start today. Before we get into some of the other takeaways, things that we've taken away from the last 12 hours or so, just processing the game and what happened. So I had talked about before, Ryan, how this to me felt like one of those pivotal. I mean, it's a rivalry game. They all mean something, but this is one similar to some of them that they've played against Ohio State. And anytime you play your rivals, it's going to be important. So I went back and found 4 games from the Jim Harbaugh era that are kind of, I won't say similar losses because every game is different, but in terms of the opportunities when you had the lead late in the game, what happened from there. So I got to turn things back all the way to the start. MSU 2015, we know what happened there. It was kind of a fluky play at the end of the game, but Michigan leads late in that game. There are 6 drives after they take the lead. They go field goal, punt, field goal, punt, trouble with the snap. Iowa 2016 had a lead late. You're 5 drives after you have a lead. Punt, field goal, interception, punt. Ohio State 2016, you have a lead late, fourth quarter or late in the third quarter, whatever it was. 4 drives, interception, punt. Ohio State 2017, a game they really had no business being in, period, but still, again, led late in the game. Punt, turnover on downs, interception, game over. Saturday's game against Michigan State, their last 5 drives of the game, they go punt. This is them leading 30-14 with about 8 minutes left in the third quarter. Punt, field goal, fumble, turnover on downs, interception. There are a lot of people that will come out of this, despite everything that happened, like it still feels different. This team is right there. And they're not wrong when they say that. But my day after takeaway is that when the chips are down and they've been in these momentum swinging type of games for this coaching staff, this program, whatever it was, they have not done nearly enough in winning time. And to me, when there are things that feel very different about this team and what it can do and how they respond to adversity. But on that stage, 2 top 10 teams playing against each other, rivalry game, bragging rights on the line, Big Ten East pecking order on the line. That's what they came up with in the fourth quarter. And that's, to me, we had a hard time identifying what led to yesterday's loss in the immediate aftermath. To me, that's the story of the game, is the inability to close.
I think you hit the nail on the head as far as something that you can find that's consistently been a part or a problem of any Harbaugh team to this point. I think that you kind of want to take this season, like people have said, this is a special one, this is different, it feels different. All those things were true until noon yesterday. And not even then, but until about the point that you said, 8 minutes left in the third quarter. Because it's not just this game. I feel like it's very consistent that we go in at halftime with a lead and probably feeling decent about ourselves. And then the opposing team will come out and dominate the second half. It happened with Rutgers this season. It happened at Nebraska this season. It happened now at Michigan State this season. I feel like we are bottom of the barrel in the Big Ten, or near the bottom, when it comes to what are we doing at halftime to make adjustments, to change what we're doing in order to win this football game. I feel like we do a lot of, it's cliche, but we do a lot of, let's just try not to lose. Let's play not to lose, play some clean football and see where things fall. But you can tell by the end result in our drives offensively, like you listed out, punt, field goal. I mean, our red zone offense already has probably been, one of the issues of this team. For a team that's a one-loss team, it's been an issue. And it just gets worse in the second half because we get more. I think we get more conservative. We're don't want to take too much risk, and that in the end lets people come back on us. And unfortunately, we had a double-edged sword. From one of my takeaways from the game was we got super conservative on defense. Why are we still running two high safeties when Kenneth Walker is the only offense that they have? That's the only person doing anything, and yet here we are in a shell two, and we're not dedicating everybody to the run. The fact that it is an embarrassment. And I wanted to make sure I was right about it before I came and said this emotionally charged, but it is an embarrassment to have a 2-score lead and the other team chose to run the ball to catch back up to you. That doesn't happen. You should have had them in a one-dimensional pass-first mindset, but because we didn't commit to shutting down the run, we're afraid. And I've been thumping my chest, McDonald, be conservative, keep it in front of you, all that stuff. But at a certain point, you got a guy stumbling and back on the ropes. You got to go throw a haymaker and knock him to the ground. And we didn't do that. We didn't have too many run pressures. They knew where we were going to be the whole second half defensively to block us and scheme us. And with that being paired with our conservative offense, we were asking for them to come back on us. They didn't do anything special. We didn't do anything to adjust. And, that's a learning point, I think, for McDonald. And hopefully we can grow from that. I give him a benefit of the doubt. It's his first year, first Michigan State game as a coordinator. You learned a lesson. You can't back off. But I definitely think that both sides being conservative in the second half and us getting outcoached in the second half is something that's been consistent with Harbaugh, not just this year, but through all his years here, and it's a problem.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is, too, I mean, for as big of an issue as the defense was, and it goes hand in hand, we talk about, as the dog busts in the door here, it goes hand in hand where we talk about the conservative nature of how they close things out defensively. Ryan, they scored 10 points in the second half. Like in the here and now of college football, like you have to, they were all they needed was one touchdown drive in the last 5 or 6 drives of the game to put this thing away. I mean, that's all they need, and they couldn't come up with it. And they were sloppy with the football. They turned over the football. I mean, ball security has been a bit of an issue throughout the year, whether it be drops from guys like Donovan Edwards or Blake Corum, or J.J. McCarthy ran loose with it twice yesterday, and the one cost him the football game. And I think we do have clarification now that McNamara was, to use Jim Harbaugh's words, quote unquote, dealing with something when he came out of the game. Like I think it's still kind of unclear where some sort of injury took place, but fact of the matter is he was on the sideline, and you've played. I think that JJ McCarthy has an extremely bright future at Michigan. He does. You see it the way he plays, the way he carries himself. But he's played enough this year where that moment shouldn't be too big for him in fumbling the football. So, like you said yesterday, I think that's a learning experience. But when we look at it at the end of the day, it's a missed opportunity. And something I wrote about in the column is that, and I think we may have briefly touched on this in yesterday's podcast, like this one hurts double because of what it means in the short term. Obviously, you no longer completely control your own destiny in the Big Ten East. And technically speaking, again, all of their goals are ahead of them, and that if you run the table and beat Ohio State, there's a good chance you go to Indianapolis. But they need other things to happen too, where Michigan State has to lose and all this type of stuff. So, from a broader perspective, from a longer term kind of step back and what it could mean past this year, I mean, MSU, you gifted them another boost to the stock from Mel Tucker. I mean, this is something that's going to pay dividends for them on the recruiting trail, on the transfer portal. I think the thing that bothers me the most and kind of the difference in how both teams came out of Saturday is that, to me, this was supposed to be a rebuilding, reloading, regrouping year, whatever term you want to use. I know Michigan, people inside that building probably don't feel there's such thing as a rebuilding year. And given the resources and the talent and everything that's there, I think I agree with that. But what happened is that both of those teams throughout this year won a lot of football games. And when you do that, the goalposts move, expectations change. It goes from being a year, at least from the fans, that's seen as a rebuilding project, to one where you can kind of have your cake and eat it too. You can compete with your rivals. You can compete for Big Ten championships. Um, Regardless of how they came out of the game, Michigan State is way ahead of schedule. But they get to have their cake and eat it too. And they get to play the most meaningful November football in the state. And that's the reality of the situation. Michigan State and Mel Tucker have results to sell in 2 years, through 2 years, and going, we're more than halfway through year 7 of Harbaugh, and it's still, well, we hope we can get there. We think we can get there. And I think that's, to me, when I take step back from just the short term of yesterday, long term, I feel like an opportunity was missed there as well, because now they have to kind of swim upstream against both rivals.
Yeah, it's not getting any easier anytime soon. The issue I feel like Michigan is going to have and has had is that we are fighting a war on two fronts as far as trying to keep in-house talent going south and then from going east, or I'm sorry, west to East Lansing. But I was thinking about that the other day. Ohio State's got one big benefit versus both Michigan and Michigan State is you get a kid from Ohio, in-state kid that has offers from the Ohio Bobcats or the Ohio State Buckeyes. Which team is he going to pick? It's not really a toss-up in that scenario. Whereas here at Michigan, especially for football oriented, maybe educationally a little bit different, but football oriented, an offer from Michigan and Michigan State holds similar value, and that's not good for Michigan. We want to secure the kids we want. But I agree with you too that we're in almost through year 7 of Harbaugh, and Mel Tucker went 2-0 against us in his first 2 seasons at Michigan State with a bunch of guys that most people didn't know about, or he went out and hammered the transfer portal, and has kind of been, he's kind of a front runner and setting the stage for how to use and benefit the transfer portal, recruit the transfer portal, which I think is something that kind of a new dynamic that gives these new coaches a leg up on the teams that always are the top 5 recruiting classes of every year. You can really change the chemistry of your team through the transfer portal. And Mel Tucker's got it figured out, or at least seems to be that way. I guess one thing's positive is that he's probably getting even more considered now, more texts, more phone calls from LSU, USC, other places that are thinking that, hey, he left Colorado at the night of the banquet. He had just shook the boosters' hands. I can't wait to stay here with the Buffaloes. And then the next day he's on a plane to East Lansing. So I'm hoping that this has boosted his stock. And I hate to be in this position because I'd like to just say, hey, straight up, straight down, we're going to start beating Michigan State consistently. I would love to see Mel Tucker go. He's 2-0 and he's dangerous over there, and it's not helping Michigan. So I hope he ends up in the SEC or the Pac-12 and we can get rid of him, but only because I respect him and think he's done a great job. And it's, kind of looks like Harbaugh's got his pants around his ankles because with all the time that he's had and the long leash that he's been given through the athletic department, he's 0-2 against his new coach at Michigan State. And how can you feel any kind of good about that? Can you really rest your head on the fact that you're close? There's no way.
Yeah, it's, at a certain point, to me, close is, like I said, hit the reset button or not. At the end of the day, you are what your record says you are. 3-9 now against Michigan State and Ohio State. There's been a lot about this year that's felt different, and even Saturday, a lot of things that I felt like Michigan had to do to win that game, whether it be get that pass rush going, create explosive plays through the air on offense, limit the damage that Michigan State's wide receivers could do. They did almost all those things. The one thing they didn't do was contain Kenneth Walker. So a lot of the things, you come out of this game feeling like they did a lot of things they needed to win the game and just got beat. But then you go back and what I did with some of those end of game drives from these other fulcrum games. I mean, I didn't even go into 2018 Ohio State when you were within a score at halftime and then all hell broke loose. But listen, at a certain point, it's got to stop happening. Someone's got to step up, and you have to be aggressive. You have to close out football games consistently. When they've needed one play somewhere from someone, it's been the other team that's been able to find that. And I don't know if that's like when it happens this often. I don't know how that reflects on anything but the coaching staff or the way the game's being called or whatever. But we could spend a long time talking about that. The fact, like, there were some positives to take out of this game. Ryan, it gave you a good night's sleep to think about it. You said you wanted to be clear on what some of those things were. What are some things you saw as positives coming out of Saturday?
I thought we saw a little bit of creativity and mixing it up on first down with Josh Gaddis in our offense. I thought our offense was moving the ball pretty consistently for most of the game. It obviously hits a stall when we get to the red zone, which is frustrating and definitely a part of the reason why we weren't up by more in the third quarter. But we were consistently moving the ball down the field. We had a lot of 3rd and 1s, a lot of 3rd and 2s, a lot of 3rd and 3s where the whole playbook's available to us. McNamara probably had his best game throwing the football. Kind of an undersided or backsided compliment because after looking at it, almost all his throws were either swings, hitches on the outside, or a crossing route that was it was all the same crossing route, 5 yards, 10 yards down the field. There weren't hard throws to make. And we weren't able to attack. If you were to kind of chart where we threw the ball on the field, we still weren't be able to throw it more than 15 yards past the line of scrimmage. So we had a short passing and an intermediate passing game that was successful, but we lack the big play ability, at least on the throw. Obviously, we have a 90 whatever yard touchdown reception, but that was a catch and run. So it was good to see the running game and the short intermediate passing game as successful as it was. We had the fumble and the interception. The interception, I think, was probably a result of us pushing a little bit, and then the fumble was JJ trying to do too much. But overall, offensively, this is probably the most complete offensive game we've put together. It's just too many field goals, not enough touchdowns, and if you before this game, if you'd have said, "Hey, we're going to score 30 plus points," I would say we're in a very good position to win the game. I would not have thought Michigan State would have scored with us. So that's why when it came to the blame game, I do put more of the burden on the defense and defense's coaches as opposed to the offense.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I think all that checks out to me. From a receiving perspective, great to see Andrel Anthony have a breakout game. 6 catches, 155 yards, 2 touchdowns, the 93-yard catch and run, like you said. I don't know where that guy's been all year, but apparently he's been doing it for practice in weeks, and we were just now seeing it on the field. So I don't know if it was them, if it was just this was his opportunity, this was going to be his time, or it took time for him to earn it, or maybe it was this wrinkle they were bringing out in his hometown. I don't know, but the fact of the matter is he looked good on Saturday. Looks like he might have something there in terms of a guy. Like he looks fast. He looks the part. So that was good to see. Eric All, I think, continues to, have a. I think he only had 5 or 6 catches last week. I say only, that was a career high, but 10 catches for 98 yards. Like I said, stuff over the middle of the field was wide open, and drops and concentration for him has been a little bit of an issue in the past. So.
We've got to find him in the red zone. That's another thing. We have a great tight end, and we don't see him in the red zone. That's what Harbaugh does. And I didn't mean to cut you off, but Eric All having such sure hands and not getting any targets in the red zone at all season, that's a problem. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm with you there. I hope that this kind of breakout he's had over the last couple of weeks makes him a bigger part of the offense, because if you're going to have a pass game that is content to do the short stuff and work the middle of the field, like that's a weapon you need to have there. So Eric All, I like what we've seen out of him. He also blocks his ass off in the run game. Mm-hmm. He's the complete package, and he's coming on strong, and that's great to see. That's a good piece for them moving forward. Andrel Anthony and Eric All, I mean, if there were game balls to hand out on offense, I think they'd get them for me outside of Cade McNamara as well. But so yeah, I mean the passing game is developing in that regard. I mean, despite all of that, they were still able to run for 146 yards, which is not where they want it to be. But 4.3 yards per pop. I think they're pretty cool with how that went down. Donovan Edwards didn't make the trip, so it was pretty much Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum. Haskins had 14 carries. Corum had 13. So that's more or less what we've seen all year. Um, Other than that, I'm trying to think of some positives on defense. I mean, David Ojabo, Aiden Hutchinson, we talked about them. Those guys are unblockable. That's going to be a duo that, like I said before, even if this extra attention continues to be paid to Hutchinson, Ojabo is coming on strong and looks not every bit the pro talent that Hutchinson might be, but that's a guy that is starting to maybe warrant a longer look from some of those guys at the next level as well. So those guys were great. I think Mike Morris continues to play well. On the back end, RJ Moten had a decent day. Other than that, everyone else is pretty quiet back there. So in terms of positives, I mean, I think what we've seen is that this team can put drives together. The problem is they don't finish drives. So I don't have any and this will kind of tie into how we close this out here, talking about what happens next. But you talked about yesterday how the rest of this season comes down to what you do, not only in November, but that last game in November now. I think that this team can drive the football on pretty much anyone it plays. But can they finish those drives? That's going to be the biggest question for me moving forward. Maybe it's as simple as targeting an Eric All in the red zone, or I don't know. It's just there's still through 8 weeks, there's still a bit of a breakdown there. Like you can get early on in the year, you can get away with some of the not being able to get the job done in that area. But it's week 8. We're 2 months into the year. Like that's something that has to be fixed and fixed quickly. So those are positives I had. Let's move into where the hell does this season go from here? It was just announced Sunday before we recorded here. Indiana next weekend in Ann Arbor is going to be a night game, which I'm not really excited for that at all. It has the potential to be a hangover game, and then you have to wait all day for it. But the road ahead, it does not get any easier. Penn State pushed Ohio State on Saturday night. You still play Ohio State. Maryland can be explosive at times offensively. So there aren't really any. If you want to argue that Saturday could be a gimme against Indiana, sure, fine. But we've seen Indiana's another team beat Michigan last year. Has always kind of been a thorn in their side, especially in some of these Harbaugh era games. So yeah, on high alert for that. But what happens next, and where do they go from here? I have no idea where this is heading.
No, I don't know where this is headed, but as far as a lot of these guys, there's a lot for all these guys to play for still, which is, it's tough that you don't necessarily have control of your own destiny. It's always a bitter pill to swallow, especially when, you played the game you played and had it won and lost it the way we lost it. But, there's still an opportunity out there. Michigan State, I don't think that they have the power to beat Ohio State. I could be wrong, but I don't see that happening. And I also think that Michigan State has the possibility, especially if Kenneth Walker ends up dinged up or something, they have the possibility of dropping another Big Ten game before the end of this is all said and done, and they could be a 2-loss Big Ten team. So if you can just be a 1-loss Big Ten team, you can put yourself in a position that you might be considered, and anything you wanted at the beginning of the season could be there for us. So with that being the case, can't control any of those things. You've got, whatever it is, 4 games left to finish off this season, and you win all 4. Everything you wanted at the beginning of the season might be there for you. It might not, but at this point, you can't really think about that. You've just got to win the games in front of you and try to continue to improve. There's definitely more to this team than there has been in the years past, and that's exciting. It's not enough to have beaten Michigan State, which we'll have to all get over and lick our wounds and move on. But there's the opportunity, I think, to continue to improve. If we can get, a little bit more creative defensively, if we can get a little bit better in the red zone, if we can do a couple better things on both sides of the ball, we'll push Ohio State too. And maybe it's just me and where my head rests, but if we can go to Penn State and win and then take care of business at home versus Indiana and Maryland, that big last game is going to mean something. It absolutely is going to mean something. And we can compete in that game provided that we continue to get better. If we don't, we talked about it yesterday, but if we let this game sit on our minds and we don't improve as a team, we don't get better in any facet of our game, Ohio State's going to come in here and trounce us. And it's going to be, another one of those years. We know what those years have been like. But if we can get better, there's a chance that we can be even with Ohio State coming out of the second half And then finally, we have to come out and win a second half. That's something that's a huge concern, and hopefully we can get that done. But I'm playing for, you guys came out in the Big Ten Media Day and said, we're going to die if we don't beat Ohio, or whatever. I'm paraphrasing, whatever the quote was. We'll die before we let Ohio State win, or something.
We'll beat our
That's
rivals or die trying, I believe it was.
there. That's what it was. Yeah. So you're not dead yet. There's another rival game at the end of this season, and you kind of put all your eggs in that basket from the get go by saying that. So come out and do it, because I tell you what, people will be a lot more forgiving of this Michigan State loss if they can find a way to beat Ohio State at home to end the season. People won't even remember. So that's what I'd be looking forward to, and that's what I'd want, because you got a legacy you want your team to have, as Aiden Hutchinson and some of these seniors have talked about. And if you don't get over this hangover from this loss, your legacy, you won't be remembered. You're just going to be another one of those, thought they'd be good Harbaugh teams, but couldn't finish in November.
Yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow, but a lot to still play for, obviously. And again, um, they've. I think another takeaway, just as we get out of here, is that I think what I've seen through 8 weeks is I think this is a good football team, and I think they're pretty decently prepared. It's just they just have to play a little bit better. I don't think that the mountain is so steep to climb that they're so far behind. And I mean, Ohio State obviously recruits a lot better than everyone else does, but I think that they can give themselves a puncher's chance, but they got to take care of business in these other 3 games first. There's no reason that they should lose to Indiana or Maryland. Penn State, we'll see what happens. Thankfully, it's not going to be. I don't think it's going to be a whiteout game or a night game, so that's something going in their favor. So you just kind of have to move on from it and put your stamp on the season best you can and go from there. So Saturdays hurts, and someone on Twitter after the game said, similar to what you just said, this is easily erased with a win over Ohio State. And the only thing, my pushback to that is, the only thing easily erased against Ohio State in most seasons is your will to live. So nothing about that is easily erased. But like I said, if the end result is that Michigan finds a way to get a win in that one, as daunting as it might seem in the here and now, that's going to, like you said, leave a legacy for everyone else. But I don't know. Any other thoughts on Michigan State before we get out of here, Ryan?
Just that, there's we've talked a lot of weaknesses, but some things we got to do. Cornelius Johnson was lined up one-on-one a lot, and we didn't even look his way. We've got to find a receiver that we like. I know we lost Ronnie Bell, but we've got to get over it, and we've got to find someone that we like. And maybe it's Anthony, number one. Maybe it's him now, but the fact that he was so on an island with someone, and we were like, no, we're not taking a matchup there. We don't want it. That bothered me. And then defensive tackle, we've talked about a lot this season that they were going to get tested, and they didn't show up this game. Mozzie Smith, Chris Hinton have had good seasons and good games, but they didn't register hardly anything and didn't help out in our run game. And, I just feel like these little gaps that we've had show up in the past are starting to show up against the better teams, and just want to continue to develop and get better. That's one thing that bothers me more than anything else when we talk football is 2017, we're talking about the quarterback and the defense and this, and then we come back in 2018 and same thing, same story, history repeating itself. We're just banging our heads against the same issues. And I hope we can get some of these things that we've talked about squared away. I just want to see some improvement. I want to believe that this new coaching staff and McDonald and Mike Hart being part of the program, all these things are influencing some change in what we've seen as the 7-year culture of Jim Harbaugh's program. All I want to see is, can we get better in this last little stint, or is it going to be more of the same? Are we going to lose one of these games coming up and be a 2-loss team going to the Ohio State game and not compete in the Ohio State game? If that's the case, why are we still doing this to ourselves? Why are we hurting ourselves over and over again? But we'll see. Let's be positive. Let's be optimistic. That's what I keep telling myself. Let's do those things and watch these guys play, because it's been fun. It's just so hard to swallow what happened yesterday.
Yeah, just get better, because it truly feels like, to me, I don't think they've played their best 4-quarter football game yet. So
No,
I think
you're
that's
right.
still there for them. So, well, that's going to do it for us. Ryan, again, thank you for your time. Everyone, thanks if you watched us on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications on when these videos go up. Podcast wise, we're wherever you get your shows, Apple, Google, Spotify, it's all there. Be sure to do all the things you need to do there. Leave us a review, all the good stuff. So for Ryan Van Bergen, this has been Anthony T. Broome. As we put a bow on the loss to Michigan State, this has been another edition of the Wolverine.com podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon.
Go Blue.